On September 9th, 2017, the Emerald Crown Casino glittered like a fortress on the Las Vegas Strip, its reputation for exclusivity matched only by its cutting-edge security systems. Every chip, card, and dollar was tracked with mathematical precision. Yet inside its labyrinth of service corridors, one man held something more powerful than any surveillance program: the master keys. At 4:11 a.m., cameras recorded a familiar sight. Martin Lopez, a trusted keys clerk with nearly a decade of spotless service, moving calmly through a restricted corridor. In his hands was a master key ring, capable of opening cash cages, counting rooms, and vault staging areas. To guards monitoring the feeds, it looked like another routine shift. Minutes later, $33 million in sealed cash bags vanished from the vault transfer room. Lopez, the man entrusted to safeguard the casino's heart, had spent years quietly studying its weaknesses. That morning, he exploited them with chilling precision, walking away with one of the largest inside jobs in American casino history. By dawn, Martin Lopez had disappeared into the desert with enough money to vanish forever, leaving stunned executives, frustrated investigators, and an industry forced to confront its blind faith in employee trust. Casinos could track every chip on the floor, but they had handed their future to the wrong man, and it cost them $33 million. Before we rewind to reveal how a simple keys clerk pulled off one of Vegas's most audacious inside jobs and vanished without leaving a single trace, I need you to hit that subscribe button right now. Drop a like if you're ready for this incredible story, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from, because this case is going to change everything you think you know about who really controls casino security. Martin Alejandro Lopez understood power better than most people understand money. At 41, he had spent nearly 10 years working as a casino keys clerk at the Emerald Crown, occupying one of the most trusted but least visible positions in the entire Las Vegas gaming industry. His job was deceptively simple: maintain custody of master keys, issue temporary access to authorized personnel, and log every transaction in computer systems that tracked who had access to what areas at any given time. But simplicity often masked profound responsibility, and Martin's position gave him something that even casino executives didn't possess: comprehensive knowledge of every locked door, every secured area, every restricted zone where the Emerald Crown conducted its most sensitive operations. He knew which keys opened cash cages, which ones provided access to counting rooms, and most importantly for his eventual crime, which master keys could unlock vault staging areas where millions of dollars in currency awaited transport by armored vehicles. Born in East Los Angeles to a family of maintenance workers who had built careers in the service industries that kept Southern California functioning, Martin had inherited both mechanical aptitude and the kind of quiet reliability that made him valuable to employers who needed trustworthy workers in sensitive positions. His father, Carlos, had spent 30 years as a custodial supervisor at Los Angeles International Airport, while his mother, Elena, worked as a hotel housekeeper in Beverly Hills establishments that catered to wealthy celebrities and business executives. Martin excelled in technical subjects during high school, showing particular talent for understanding mechanical systems and security procedures that his teachers believed could lead to a career in law enforcement or private security. He earned good grades despite his family's financial limitations and was accepted to several community colleges where he could study criminal justice or security management while working part-time to cover tuition and living expenses. But economic necessity intervened before Martin could pursue higher education. When Carlos was injured in a workplace accident that left him partially disabled and unable to continue heavy maintenance work, Martin made the difficult decision to enter the workforce immediately to help support his parents and younger siblings. During their family's financial crisis, Las Vegas in the early 2000s offered opportunities for young men with Martin's technical skills and reliability, particularly in the rapidly expanding casino industry that required enormous numbers of support staff to maintain operations that never stopped. The Emerald Crown, which was opening as one of the Strip's most luxurious gaming destinations, hired Martin as a junior maintenance assistant after he demonstrated exceptional knowledge of locks, keys, and access control systems during their rigorous interview process. Martin's promotion to keys clerk came after 3 years of exemplary service in various maintenance roles that had given him detailed knowledge of the casino's physical infrastructure and security procedures. The position required absolute trustworthiness, comprehensive background investigation, and psychological evaluation to ensure that whoever held master keys would never abuse their access for personal gain or criminal purposes. Martin was exactly what we were looking for, recalled Jennifer Martinez, who served as the Emerald Crown Security Administrator during Martin's early years as Keys clerk. He understood the critical nature of key management and took the responsibility seriously. He was completely reliable, never made mistakes that could compromise our security, and had the kind of quiet professionalism that made everyone comfortable trusting him with comprehensive access to our most sensitive areas. For nearly 10 years, Martin Lopez was the perfect employee. He arrived early for every shift, maintained meticulous records that exceeded the casino's documentation standards, and managed the complex key inventory with precision that made him indispensable during shift changes, emergency situations, and special events that required modified access procedures. His personnel file contained nothing but commendations from supervisors and recognition for his role in maintaining security protocols that protected hundreds of millions of dollars in assets. But beneath the professional competence and institutional loyalty, Martin harbored growing resentment about the enormous disparity between his comprehensive access to wealth and his own increasingly desperate financial situation. Every day he issued keys that opened doors to rooms containing more money than he would earn in multiple lifetimes, while he struggled to make mortgage payments on a modest house in Henderson that had become a financial albatross threatening to destroy his credit and his future. The financial pressures that would eventually drive Martin to crime began accumulating in 2014, when his attempt to improve his economic situation through real estate investment became a catastrophic mistake that would haunt him for years. Like millions of Americans who believe that property ownership represented the path to financial security, Martin had leveraged his savings and good credit to purchase a duplex in a Henderson neighborhood that was supposed to generate rental income. While building equity for his future, the investment seemed prudent when Martin made the purchase. Housing prices in Las Vegas were recovering from the 2008 financial crisis. Rental demand was strong due to population growth, and the duplex appeared to be in good condition with tenants already in place. Martin's plan was straightforward: use rental income to cover the mortgage while building equity that could eventually provide financial security for his planned retirement. But real estate investment proved far more complex and expensive than Martin had anticipated. The tenants who had seemed reliable during the purchase process began missing rent payments within months, forcing Martin to cover the full mortgage from his casino salary while pursuing expensive eviction procedures through Nevada's landlord-tenant courts. Repairs and maintenance that hadn't been obvious during the initial inspection required thousands of dollars in emergency expenditures that drained Martin's savings and forced him to rely on credit cards to cover basic living expenses. The situation deteriorated further when both units became vacant simultaneously, leaving Martin responsible for mortgage payments of $2,400 per month on a property that was generating zero income while requiring continued maintenance and utility costs. His attempts to find new tenants were hampered by a softening rental market and competition from newer properties that offered amenities his aging duplex couldn't match. By 2015, Martin was facing the prospect of foreclosure on an investment that had consumed his life savings while creating debt obligations that exceeded his ability to pay. The duplex had become a financial prison that trapped him in escalating monthly losses while destroying the credit rating that had taken years to build through careful financial management. Court documents from Martin's eventual bankruptcy proceedings revealed the extent of his financial devastation. The duplex, which he had purchased for $185,000, was appraised at only $140,000 when he was forced to sell it in a short sale that left him owing the bank over $60,000 in deficiency amounts. Credit card debts that he had used to cover repairs and mortgage payments exceeded $80,000, and legal fees from eviction and foreclosure proceedings added another $15,000 to his total obligations. The divorce that followed was both a cause and consequence of Martin's financial crisis. His wife, Sandra, a dental hygienist who had initially supported the real estate investment, grew tired of the constant stress and arguments about money that had consumed their marriage. She filed for divorce in 2016, seeking spousal support and a share of assets that no longer existed due to Martin's investment disaster. Martin became obsessed with the money he was losing on that duplex, recalled fellow Keys clerk Roberto Santos, who worked alongside Martin for 6 years. He'd talk about how much he owed every month while he was literally handing out keys to rooms containing millions of dollars. You could see it eating away at him, the irony of being surrounded by wealth while facing personal bankruptcy. I thought he was just venting frustration, but maybe it was something deeper. Working as a Keys clerk at the Emerald Crown provided Martin with unprecedented insight into the casino's security infrastructure and detailed knowledge of vulnerabilities that even senior management didn't fully understand. His position required him to maintain comprehensive records of every master key, every restricted access area, and every employee who required temporary entry to sensitive zones throughout the facility. The Emerald Crown's key management system was designed around the principle of compartmentalized access, with different keys providing entry to specific areas based on legitimate business needs and security clearance levels. Dealers received keys to gaming supply rooms, housekeeping staff had access to guest areas in storage facilities, and maintenance workers carried keys that allowed them to service mechanical and electrical systems throughout the casino. But Martin's position as Keys clerk gave him something that no other single employee possessed: master keys that could open virtually any door in the casino, combined with comprehensive knowledge of which keys accessed which areas in detail. Records of when different zones would be occupied or vacant. His responsibilities included issuing temporary access to employees who needed entry to areas outside their normal duties, tracking key usage patterns to ensure security compliance, and maintaining backup access methods that could be used during emergencies or system failures. The most critical aspect of Martin's access was his authority to issue keys for vault staging areas where enormous amounts of cash were temporarily stored during transfer procedures. These rooms contained sealed bags of currency that had been collected from gaming tables and slot machines, but hadn't yet been transported to off-site storage facilities by armored car services. During busy periods, particularly after major events or holiday weekends, these staging areas could contain tens of millions of dollars in currency awaiting pickup. Martin's position was designed to be a security asset, but it actually created a single point of failure that we hadn't adequately considered, explained security consultant Dr. James Wilson, who analyzed the Emerald Crown theft for insurance investigators. We assumed that comprehensive background checks and psychological evaluations would ensure that Keys clerks would never abuse their access. But we didn't adequately account for how financial desperation could transform trusted employees into security threats. The casino's key logging system relied on computer databases that tracked who had checked out which keys at what times, creating electronic records that were supposed to provide complete accountability for access to sensitive areas. But Martin discovered that the system contained vulnerabilities that could be exploited by someone who understood its operation and had legitimate authority to issue keys to other employees. The most significant vulnerability was the system's reliance on accurate data entry by Keys clerks who were trusted to log every transaction honestly and completely. If Martin issued duplicate keys without recording both transactions, or if he modified database records to conceal unauthorized access, the discrepancies might not be discovered for days or weeks depending on audit schedules and the specific areas involved. Martin also realized that the casino's surveillance systems, while comprehensive in public areas, provided less complete coverage of service corridors and administrative areas where Keys clerks typically worked. Security cameras were positioned to monitor customer interactions and detect cheating at gaming tables, but they often created blind spots in back-of-house areas where employee activities were considered routine and non-threatening. Martin spent the better part of 2016 and early 2017 conducting what amounted to a comprehensive security assessment of his own employer, testing vulnerabilities in key management procedures while appearing to perform routine duties that attracted no attention from supervisors or security personnel. Unlike impulsive criminals who rely on opportunity and luck, Martin approached his eventual theft with systematic methodology that reflected both his technical knowledge and his desperate financial situation. The testing began with small violations of key management protocols designed to determine whether security audits would detect minor discrepancies in access records. Martin would occasionally issue duplicate keys for the same area, logging only one transaction while retaining the second key to see if anyone noticed the missing inventory during routine audits. These experiments revealed that the casino's audit procedures were less thorough than Martin had initially assumed. Key inventories were reconciled monthly, but auditors focused primarily on ensuring that all keys were physically present rather than verifying that database records accurately reflected every issuance and return. As long as the total number of keys matched expected inventory levels, discrepancies in usage logs might not be investigated for weeks. Martin also began studying the casino's cash handling procedures with the same systematic attention he applied to key management, learning when vault staging areas would contain maximum amounts of currency and which times offered optimal opportunities for undetected access. His legitimate duties occasionally required him to issue keys for these areas, providing opportunities to observe armored car schedules, security procedures, and the physical layout of rooms where enormous amounts of money were temporarily stored. The breakthrough insight came when Martin realized that holiday weekends created perfect conditions for his planned theft. Labor Day weekend typically generated some of the highest cash volumes of the year as tourists flocked to Las Vegas for final summer celebrations, creating enormous accumulations of currency that would remain in staging areas until Tuesday morning. Pickups by armored car services. Martin's position gave him advanced knowledge of these cash transfer schedules and the security procedures that governed access to staging areas during peak accumulation periods. He could predict exactly when maximum amounts of money would be present with minimum security oversight, particularly during overnight hours when skeleton crews focused on customer service rather than back-of-house security monitoring. Martin's plan required equipment that could transport large amounts of currency without attracting attention from security personnel or surveillance systems that monitored employee activities in service areas. Unlike external criminals who might use obvious burglary tools or weapons that would immediately identify them as threats, Martin needed methods that would appear completely legitimate during routine key management duties. The solution was elegantly simple: standard cleaning equipment that was so common in casino service areas that it became effectively invisible to security personnel accustomed to seeing housekeeping staff move through restricted areas during all hours of operation. Martin gradually acquired industrial laundry carts, duffel bags, and other materials that could be used to transport stolen currency while appearing to be routine cleaning supplies. The equipment was stored in a rented locker facility in North Las Vegas, far enough from the casino to avoid any connection between Martin's legitimate employment and his criminal preparations. The storage unit was rented under a fictitious business name, using cash payments and minimal personal information to prevent investigators from tracing the rental agreement back to Martin after the theft was discovered. Martin also purchased a used SUV through a complex arrangement involving a friend who bought the vehicle using his own identification, while understanding that Martin would be the actual user. The arrangement provided Martin with reliable transportation that couldn't be traced to him through normal vehicle registration databases, while giving him the cargo capacity needed to transport large amounts of stolen currency after removing it from the casino. The vehicle was modified with hidden compartments that could accommodate millions of dollars in cash while maintaining its normal appearance during routine traffic stops or security inspections. Martin spent months perfecting the concealment system, ensuring that $33 million in currency could be transported without creating obvious bulges or weight distribution problems that might alert law enforcement officers. September 4, 2017 dawned clear and hot in Las Vegas, with perfect weather conditions that promised to bring massive crowds to the Strip for the final major holiday weekend of summer. The Emerald Crown was fully booked with high rollers, tourists, and celebrities who had come to the city for Labor Day celebrations that would generate some of the highest gaming revenues of the year. Martin worked his regular shifts throughout the long weekend, processing key requests and maintaining access records while carefully observing the cash accumulation patterns that would determine the optimal timing for his theft. The casino processed over $400 million in gaming activity during the three-day period, creating the largest currency reserves in the vault staging areas since the previous New Year's weekend. The timing was perfect from multiple perspectives. Labor Day Monday was a federal holiday, which meant that armored car services operated on reduced schedules and wouldn't pick up weekend cash accumulations until Tuesday morning. The delay created a window when maximum amounts of currency would be present in staging areas with minimum security oversight, particularly during overnight hours when most staff were focused on customer service rather than back-of-house monitoring. Martin had volunteered to work the Monday night shift, explaining to supervisors that he needed overtime pay to cover financial obligations. a request that was readily approved given his reputation for reliability and the casino's need for experience staff during high-volume periods. The assignment provided legitimate cover for his presence in service areas during the optimal time window for his planned theft. Weather conditions also favored Martin's plan. The intense heat typical of Las Vegas in early September meant that many employees would be working in air-conditioned areas rather than patrolling outdoor service zones where Martin would need to load stolen currency into his vehicle. The reduced foot traffic in loading areas would minimize the risk of encountering other employees during the most vulnerable phase of his escape. By Sunday night, Martin had confirmed that vault staging areas contained approximately $45 million in currency awaiting Tuesday pickup, the largest accumulation he had observed during months of careful surveillance. The money was stored in sealed bags that could be easily transported, and security procedures were operating on holiday weekend protocols that reduced monitoring in back-of-house areas while maintaining focus on customer-facing operations. At exactly 4:03 a.m. on Tuesday, September 9, 2017, Martin Lopez began executing the crime that would make him one of the most wanted men in America and create one of the FBI's most puzzling unsolved thefts. Security cameras captured every stage of his plan, but the footage would only reveal the sophistication and audacity of his operation after it was too late to prevent the largest keys-related theft in Las Vegas history. Martin's shift had officially ended at midnight, but he had remained in the casino to complete inventory reconciliation that provided legitimate cover for his continued presence in key management areas during the early morning hours when his theft would occur. The work was routine enough to attract no attention from security personnel who were accustomed to seeing keys clerks work extended hours during busy periods. At 4:03 a.m., Martin signed out a master key ring using the standard electronic logging system, recording the access request as janitorial support for overnight cleaning crews that frequently required entry to restricted areas for routine maintenance activities. The transaction appeared completely normal in the casino's computer systems and would not be questioned unless someone specifically reviewed key usage logs during the following days. Security footage shows Martin walking through service corridors with the unhurried confidence of someone performing duties he had carried out thousands of times during his nearly 10-year career. His route took him through areas that were monitored by surveillance cameras, but his official uniform and legitimate key access made his presence not just acceptable, but expected during overnight operations. At 4:07 a.m., Martin began using his master keys to access restricted corridors that led to the vault staging areas where Labor Day weekend's cash accumulation awaited Tuesday morning pickup by armored car services. The electronic locks recognized his credentials as valid, creating computer logs that would initially appear to document routine key management activities rather than criminal access. The vault staging room contained exactly what Martin had observed during his months of careful surveillance: dozens of sealed canvas bags containing currency that had been collected from gaming tables, slot machines, and other revenue sources throughout the long weekend. The bags were organized on wheeled carts that could be easily moved by armored car personnel, but they could also be handled by a single individual who understood their operation and had sufficient time to work without interruption. At 4:11 a.m., Martin entered the staging room using his master key access and began the systematic removal of currency bags that contained exactly $33 million in cash, slightly less than the total present, but enough to achieve financial security while potentially delaying discovery of the theft until regular audit procedures revealed the discrepancy. The loading process required exactly 11 minutes of careful work that Martin had mentally rehearsed dozens of times during his months of planning. Each bag weighed approximately 35 pounds and needed to be transferred from storage carts to the industrial laundry cart that Martin had positioned in the corridor outside the staging room. The physical demands were substantial but manageable for someone who had prepared for the exertion and understood the importance of working quickly without appearing rushed or panicked. Security cameras recorded Martin's movements throughout the process, but his official access credentials and cleaning cart made the activity appear to be routine maintenance or supply management rather than the largest theft in the casino's history. Even if security personnel had been monitoring the feeds in real time, they would likely have seen nothing more suspicious than an employee conducting authorized duties in areas where he had legitimate business. At 4:22 a.m., Martin began moving his cart toward the loading dock, where his modified SUV was waiting in shadows between legitimate service vehicles that regularly used the area for deliveries and waste removal. The route took him through service corridors that were designed to be invisible to customers, past areas where security monitoring focused on preventing external intrusions rather than detecting internal threats. The transfer of currency from the cart to his vehicle took less than 4 minutes and occurred in a location that was strategically chosen to avoid direct surveillance, while appearing completely normal to anyone who might observe the activity from a distance. Martin had practiced the movements until they became automatic reflexes that could be executed even under the stress of committing a crime that would change his life forever. At 4:26 a.m., Martin returned his now empty cart to its normal storage location and began the final phase of his plan, creating an alibi trail that would delay discovery of the theft while providing plausible explanations for his presence in restricted areas. He logged the return of his master keys using the standard electronic system, creating records that showed routine completion of authorized duties. By 4:29 a.m., Martin was driving through Las Vegas with $33 million in stolen casino money, following carefully planned routes that avoided major surveillance checkpoints while blending seamlessly into the minimal traffic of delivery, trucks, casino workers, and early commuters who were beginning their Tuesday morning routines. Security cameras at the Emerald Crown continued recording the empty vault staging room, the returned cleaning cart, and the loading dock where Martin's vehicle had been parked just minutes earlier. But Martin Lopez himself had vanished completely, taking with him a fortune that represented decades of casino profits and leaving behind only questions that would puzzle investigators for years to come. The Emerald Crown's Tuesday morning cash reconciliation revealed Martin's theft at exactly 8:43 a.m., when armored car personnel arriving for their scheduled pickup discovered that the vault staging room contained approximately $33 million less currency than the weekend's gaming records indicated should be present. What began as confusion about possible accounting errors quickly escalated into panic when supervisors confirmed that enormous amounts of cash had vanished without any corresponding documentation or legitimate explanation. The initial response focused on procedural mistakes rather than deliberate theft, reflecting the casino's reluctance to immediately assume that their security systems had been compromised by criminal activity. Labor Day weekend always created complex accounting challenges due to the volume of transactions and the multiple cash transfer procedures required to process holiday revenues. So missing money could potentially be explained by administrative errors or communication failures between different departments. But when systematic recounts of all staging areas confirmed that exactly $33 million in sealed currency bags was missing, casino management faced the horrifying realization that they were dealing with one of the largest thefts in Nevada gaming history. The missing money had been stored in specific containers that were now completely empty, indicating deliberate removal rather than accounting discrepancies or procedural confusion. Casino security immediately reviewed surveillance footage from all areas where the missing cash could have been accessed, initially focusing on external threats and assuming that the theft might have involved criminals who had somehow penetrated the casino's physical security systems. The investigation began with the assumption that sophisticated burglary techniques or insider accomplices might have enabled outsiders to access restricted areas during the vulnerable overnight hours. The breakthrough came when investigators analyzed electronic access logs that showed Martin's use of master keys in the exact areas where the theft had occurred. Initially, these records appeared to document routine key management activities, but the timing correlation between Martin's presence and the discovery of missing money was too precise to be explained by coincidence. The realization that Martin was responsible for the theft was devastating, recalled Casino Security Director Rebecca Martinez. This was someone we had trusted with comprehensive access to our most sensitive areas for nearly 10 years. He had handled master keys responsibly thousands of times without ever giving us reason to question his integrity. The idea that he could plan and execute something of this magnitude while maintaining his normal professional behavior was almost impossible to accept. The investigation of Martin's activities revealed the sophisticated nature of his planning and the extent of his preparation for permanent disappearance. His apartment in Henderson was found completely empty, except for basic furniture that had come with the rental unit, indicating that he had been systematically removing personal belongings for weeks or months before committing the actual theft. Bank records showed that Martin had closed his checking and savings accounts during the days immediately preceding the theft, withdrawing the modest balances in cash to avoid leaving electronic trails that might help investigators track his movements. After disappearing, his credit cards showed no recent activity, and his cell phone had been disconnected with no forwarding information provided to the service provider. Most puzzling to investigators was the complete absence of the stolen currency from normal law enforcement detection methods. Unlike other forms of stolen property that might surface in black markets or pawn shops, $33 million in cash could remain hidden indefinitely if Martin had access to sophisticated money laundering networks or storage methods that kept the currency out of circulation until it could be safely converted to legitimate assets. The Federal Bureau of Investigation assumed jurisdiction over the Emerald Crown theft within hours of its discovery, recognizing both the scale of the crime and its potential implications for casino security throughout the Las Vegas gaming industry. Special Agent David Santos assembled a task force that included specialists in financial crimes, employee theft, and fugitive tracking. Experts who understood that they were dealing with one of the most sophisticated inside jobs in American gambling history. The investigation immediately focused on Martin's transformation from trusted employee to master criminal, seeking to understand how someone with comprehensive security access had developed the motivation and criminal connections necessary to steal $33 million and disappear without leaving obvious traces. His clean record and reputation for absolute reliability had made him the perfect inside operative, but they also made his criminal evolution difficult to predict or analyze. Martin Lopez represents the nightmare scenario for any organization that depends on trusted employees, Agent Santos explained. He had comprehensive access to sensitive areas, detailed knowledge of security procedures, and the kind of institutional trust that made his activities appear legitimate even when he was committing crimes. Unlike external criminals who have to defeat physical security systems, Martin could walk freely through restricted areas while carrying out the largest theft in the casino's history. Digital forensics revealed that Martin had been researching topics related to international banking, money laundering techniques, and countries with limited extradition treaties for at least 8 months before the theft. His computer browsing history showed particular interest in Central American nations and Caribbean islands that offered banking privacy and residency opportunities for wealthy immigrants seeking to avoid scrutiny from their home countries. The investigation also uncovered evidence that Martin had been in communication with individuals who might have provided assistance with converting stolen currency into legitimate assets or establishing new identities in foreign countries. While the specific content of these communications remained encrypted and largely inaccessible, their timing and frequency suggested that Martin had been developing criminal relationships for months before actually committing his theft. Bank records and financial analysis revealed that Martin's real estate investment disaster had created the kind of desperate financial situation that could transform law-abiding employees into criminal threats. His bankruptcy, divorce, and mounting debts had created psychological pressures that overwhelmed his professional ethics and institutional loyalty, demonstrating how personal financial crises could compromise even the most trusted workers. The scale of Martin's theft and the sophistication of his disappearance attracted attention from international law enforcement agencies that specialized in tracking fugitives who had fled the United States with substantial assets. The FBI's legal attaché offices in multiple countries were notified about the case and began monitoring their respective territories for signs of Martin's presence or financial activities that might indicate his current location. Intelligence analysts identified several potential routes Martin might have used to transport his stolen money out of the United States and establish a new identity in countries with limited cooperation with American law enforcement. The $33 million in cash could have been moved across the Mexican border using smuggling networks typically employed for drug trafficking, or it could have been converted into legitimate investments through Caribbean banking systems that specialized in providing financial privacy. The most likely scenarios involve Martin using established money laundering networks that could convert his stolen cash into cryptocurrency, precious metals, or offshore bank accounts that would be difficult for American authorities to trace or non-retain. These services typically operated at organized crime levels and demanded substantial percentages of laundered funds, but they could provide the anonymity and security that fugitives required to enjoy their illegal gains. Central American countries like Belize, Costa Rica, and Panama were identified as potential refugees where $33 million would provide exceptional quality of life while remaining beyond the reach of effective American law enforcement. These nations offered combination of banking secrecy laws, residency programs for wealthy immigrants, and limited extradition treaties that made them ideal destinations for affluent fugitives. As the years dragged on without sightings or proof of Martin Lopez's whereabouts, investigators outlined competing theories about his fate. The most optimistic view for Martin suggests he escaped to a non-extradition country, buying citizenship and protection with his stolen $33 million. Caribbean and Central American states with citizenship by investment programs could have offered him legal sanctuary, provided he had the foresight to build escape routes and criminal contacts before the theft. In this scenario, Martin not only stole the money, but also engineered a complete second life. A darker theory argues he never lived to enjoy his fortune. Laundering such a vast sum requires dealing with high-level criminal syndicates, groups that routinely eliminate outsiders who pose risks. Amateurs who steal millions often end up victims themselves, warned Dr. Rebecca Thompson. Martin may have believed he was buying services, but he could have been arranging his own death. Yet the murder theory lacks supporting evidence. Such killings usually leave behind signals meant to warn others, but Martin's case has produced no such traces. His disappearance remains unexplained, whether it ended in quiet exile or violent erasure. The Martin Lopez case triggered comprehensive changes in key management procedures throughout the Las Vegas casino industry, as operators struggled to address vulnerabilities that had been exposed by his success in defeating systems that were designed to prevent exactly the type of theft he had committed. The revelation that a single employee could use legitimate access to steal $33 million forced fundamental reconsideration of how casinos managed employee trust and institutional security. Key management systems were redesigned to eliminate single-person access to comprehensive master keys, with new procedures requiring multiple authorization levels for any employee seeking entry to high-value areas. Computer logging systems were enhanced to provide real-time monitoring of key usage patterns, with automatic alerts for any activities that deviated from established protocols or suggested potential security threats. Employee screening procedures were expanded beyond traditional background checks to include regular financial audits, psychological evaluations, and enhanced monitoring of staff who had access to sensitive areas or valuable assets. The assumption that thorough initial screening was sufficient to ensure long-term trustworthiness was replaced by recognition that personal circumstances could change in ways that transformed reliable employees into security threats. Vault and cash handling procedures were modified to eliminate single points of failure that could be exploited by employees with comprehensive access credentials. Multiple authentication methods were implemented to ensure that no individual could access high-value areas without real-time verification and supervisory oversight, regardless of their historical trustworthiness or official authorization levels. 7 years after Martin Lopez disappeared with $33 million from a Nevada casino, he remains one of the FBI's most wanted fugitives. Despite global cooperation, advanced surveillance systems, and major rewards for information, Martin has managed to vanish almost without a trace. Lopez represents the evolution of insider theft in the digital era, Agent Santos explained. He blended institutional access, precise planning, and international escape strategies with a sophistication approaching that of professional criminals. Investigators now rely on software that scans global banking and real estate markets, searching for patterns that match Martin's meticulous style. Interpol remains involved, distributing age-progressed images and biometric data to spot him if he resurfaces. If alive, Martin lives under constant pressure, avoiding capture, concealing identities and fearing betrayal by criminal contacts who launder his stolen fortune. Experts estimate his haul could have grown to $42 million, enough for a life of luxury, but only at the cost of relying on risky underworld networks. Psychologists suggest the greatest threat to Martin isn't law enforcement, but his own mind. The isolation, stress of false identities, and severed family ties could eventually unravel him. He solved his financial problems, Dr. Thompson noted, but created psychological ones that may prove impossible to escape.